He did not wear medals or fancy armor. He wore a simple gray uniform and carried only what he needed. His boots were dirty from long walks, and his hands showed scars from past battles. He was a human soldier, trained to survive on strange planets. And now he had been sent to a place called Valkyria. Valkyria was full of red cliffs, glowing plants, and ancient stone cities. Its people, the Valkyrians, were tall and strong. Their skin had patterns like silver, and their eyes glowed faintly. Under the sun, some humans said they looked beautiful. Others called them dangerous. There had been talks of peace between humans and Valkyrians, but no one truly trusted each other. That was why a small team of human peacekeepers, including Mark, had been sent to patrol the borderlands near the capital. Mark didn't speak much during the mission. He watched, listened, and stayed alert. One morning, while the twin suns were just rising, Mark walked alone through the highland path. He had gone ahead of the others to scout a narrow trail. Near the cliffs, the air was cold and dry. Wind brushed against the rocks, carrying the faint sound of birds far below. Suddenly, he stopped. Something didn't feel right. The ground near the path was disturbed. A few stones had been moved. The dust was too fresh. Mark slowly crouched, placing his hand on his weapon but not drawing it yet. Then she appeared from behind a rock. A figure leapt forward with silent speed. A Valkyrian warrior. Her armor was deep black, shaped like dragon scales, and her long hair was tied behind her in warrior knots. Her name was Zura, though Mark would not learn that yet. She moved like a shadow, fast and deadly. In her hand was a spear with energy flickering along its edge. She thrust it toward him with deadly force. Mark rolled to the side. The spear missed his chest by inches. He drew his sidearm and pointed it at her. But he did not shoot. "Stop," he said firmly. Zura paused for just a breath, surprised by his voice. Then she attacked again. This time, Mark dodged backward, but her spear grazed his shoulder. Pain shot through his arm, but he stayed on his feet. He still did not fire. Zura narrowed her eyes. "Why do you not fight?" Mark kept his voice steady. "Because I'm not here to kill you." Zura hesitated. Her spear was ready. Her body tensed for the final strike. But her hands didn't move. Something about the way Mark looked at her made her pause. His eyes were not full of fear. They were calm, steady, even curious. She could end him now. It would be easy. One step forward and the spear would finish its job. But she didn't move, and in that moment of silence, a sound echoed across the cliffs, human voices calling Mark's name. His team was nearby. Getting closer, Zura stepped back, her eyes locked with his one last time. Then she turned and ran into the shadows of the rocks. Mark didn't follow. Blood dripped from his arm, but he stayed standing until his team reached him. "What happened?" one of the soldiers asked. Mark looked out at the empty trail ahead. "Ambush," he said. "But I'm alive, far away, deep inside the stone." Palace of Valkyria. Zura stood before the queen. The royal court was silent, lit by tall fires and green crystals. The queen sat on her high seat, wearing robes made of woven light and silver. Her eyes burned with power. "Did you complete the task?" the queen asked. Zura bowed her head. "Yes, your majesty. The human soldier is dead." The queen smiled coldly. "Good. Let them know what it means to send spies near our walls." Zura said nothing more. She turned and walked out of the chamber. But her mind was not at peace. Why had she lied? She had killed many before. Warriors, invaders, even traitors. Why had she stopped this time? She told herself it didn't matter. That the soldier was weak. That her blade had hesitated, but only for a second. Still, she could not forget his face. Calm, focused, unafraid. A part of her wanted to see him again, back at the human base. Mark sat on a medical bed while a doctor cleaned his wound. His team leader, a short man named Ross, stood nearby. "You sure it was just one attacker?" Ross asked. Mark nodded. "One Valkyrian. She knew what she was doing. Why didn't she finish the job?" Mark didn't answer right away. He looked out the window, where the red sun was rising behind the hills. I don't think she wanted to, he said quietly. Ross raised an eyebrow. She let you go? She made a choice. Ross crossed his arms. Well, we're filing this. Command will want names and reports. Mark nodded. But in his mind, the moment played again and again. The spear. Her eyes. That pause. He had been in many battles before, but this time felt different. And somehow, he knew this was not over. Not yet. The capital city of Valkyria was filled with tension. Large banners of silver and green hung from the high towers. Warriors stood watch with long spears, scanning the streets from the palace walls. The city looked beautiful from the outside, but inside the palace, unease was growing like a silent storm. Queen Thalara sat in her throne room, guarded by elite soldiers in black armor. Her eyes glowed softly with power, but today they looked tired. She had ruled for many years and seen many wars. Now, a peace treaty was being prepared between her people and the humans. It was supposed to be a new beginning, but peace was never easy. She knew some of her own generals hated the idea of working with humans. And though the queen smiled during public meetings, behind closed doors, she kept one hand on her sword. At her side stood Zura, tall, proud, silent. Her armor was polished, and her face showed no fear. Months had passed since the failed ambush. No one had questioned her story. The queen believed the human soldier was dead, and Zura's rank had quietly risen. But deep inside, Zura felt a strange weight in her chest. Every time someone said the word human, her thoughts returned to the man she spared. She had seen something in him, something different. She had not forgotten his eyes, or the calm way he spoke. Today, a group of human diplomats was scheduled to arrive. It was the final step before the treaty could be signed. The queen had ordered a full ceremony inside the throne room, hoping to show strength and peace together. Trumpets echoed across the marble walls. The tall doors of the court slowly opened. Valkyrian nobles and warriors stood straight. The queen lifted her chin. Zura moved to the side, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of her blade. A group of humans walked in. They were clean, dark uniforms with silver belts. They looked strong, but respectful. The guards on both sides watched them closely as they stepped forward into the court. Then he walked in. Zura's breath caught in her throat. The human soldier who stood beside the diplomats was the same man she had tried to kill. His name echoed in her mind like a bell. Mark. He looked almost the same, calm face, sharp eyes, quiet steps. But this time he wore a long black coat with a small silver badge on the chest. It marked him as a formal ambassador, a speaker for peace. The queen stood to greet the diplomats. But as her eyes met Mark's, she froze. Silence fell. Her mouth opened slowly. She screamed. The sound echoed across the chamber, sharp and full of rage. Valkyrian guards rushed forward, unsure of what was happening. Zura took a step back. The queen pointed at Mark, her hand shaking. You, she said, you are supposed to be dead. Mark did not move. He looked directly at the queen. I survived, he said simply, and I come in peace. The queen's face twisted with anger. She turned to Zura, her voice like thunder. You told me he was dead. You said the mission was finished. Zura opened her mouth, but no words came. The court was staring at her. The lie she had buried now floated above her like smoke. I made a mistake, she said finally, her voice quiet. A mistake. The queen shouted. You lied to your queen. You let him live. Guards grabbed Zura by the arms. She did not resist. Mark stepped forward. She could have killed me. She didn't. Everyone turned toward him. I was armed, but I didn't fight. She showed mercy. The queen's eyes burned. Mercy is not a gift for enemies. Mark held her gaze. Maybe that's why this war hasn't ended. The court murmured. Some Valkyrian nobles frowned. Others looked unsure. One of the human diplomats stepped beside Mark. We came here for peace, not war. If we are to build trust, we must understand what happened, not hide it. The queen raised her hand, silencing the room. She stared at Zura for a long time. Take her to the prison halls, she ordered. Until I decide her fate. Zura was led away. She did not look back. Her steps were steady, but her heart was heavy. Mark watched her go, then looked back at the queen. I came to help stop the bloodshed, he said. I didn't come to take revenge. The queen sat back in her throne. Her voice had lost its fire. We will speak again tomorrow. Leave us. The human group nodded and turned away. As the doors closed behind them, the court remained silent. Outside, the sun was setting behind the tall spires of the palace. Shadows stretched across the streets. Mark stood on a balcony with one of the diplomats. That was a bold move, the diplomat said. Speaking for her like that, Mark looked at the sky. She let me live when she didn't have to, he replied. Maybe that means there's still hope. The diplomat sighed. The queen's not happy. Zura may not survive this. Mark turned his eyes toward the prison tower in the distance. Then I need to talk to her, he said. Inside the cold prison hall of Valkyria, Zura sat on a stone bench, her back against the wall. Her armor had been taken. Chains hung loosely from her wrists, more for show than real force. She didn't struggle or speak. She had accepted what was coming. She had lied to her queen. She had spared a human soldier. She had broken every rule of loyalty she had been raised to follow. Now the truth was out. The queen had screamed. The court had watched. The sentence was only a matter of time. Zura stared at the ground. She remembered the moment she let him go. His calm eyes, the quiet voice. The way he didn't strike back. Something in her had shifted that day. Something she still didn't understand. Heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. The guards opened the door. Zura looked up. Mark stepped into the chamber. He wore the same long coat, now dusted from travel. His face showed no pride, no anger, only focus. The guards looked confused. You're not allowed, one of them began. Mark held out a small device, official visit, approved by the council. The guards frowned but nodded. They left the room, closing the door behind him. Zura didn't move. You came here alone, she asked quietly. Mark stepped forward, stopping just a few feet away. I needed answers. Zura looked away. I don't owe you anything. I didn't come for that. Silence passed between them. The room was quiet except for the sound of distant wind outside. Mark spoke again. You had your blade at my heart. You could have ended it, but you didn't. Zura's voice was low. I failed. Mark shook his head. You chose something else. That wasn't failure. Zura's hands rested in her lap. You don't understand my people. I was trained to follow the queen without question. Mercy is weakness in her eyes. And do you believe that? Mark asked. Zura looked up. Her eyes met his. I used to. Mark sat down on a small stool near the wall. His movements were calm, unthreatening. Why did you stop? Zura took a slow breath. I have fought in many battles, killed many enemies. But that day, something felt different. You didn't fight back. You didn't fear me. And when I looked at you, I saw something else. What did you see? Mark asked. Zura's voice was almost a whisper. A man who wanted peace more than victory. Mark leaned back slightly. Maybe that's what scared you. Zura gave a short, dry laugh. Maybe, or maybe I was tired of the killing. Mark stood and walked toward the narrow window. The view outside showed the city walls and the desert beyond. The queen thinks peace is weakness, he said. But war isn't strength. It only leaves ruins. Zura watched him. She was surprised by how calm he was. Most humans she had met were loud, proud, always trying to prove something. But Mark was different. You think you can change her mind? She asked. Mark turned toward her. I don't know, but I'm not here to fight her. I'm here to show her something better. Zura's expression changed. For the first time, her voice held doubt. And if she decides to execute me, Mark answered without hesitation, then I'll speak against it. In front of the court, if I have to. You would do that? Zura asked, eyes narrowing. You didn't take my life when you had the chance. Maybe now it's my turn to return the favor. A pause followed. Then Zura looked at the ground again. The queen won't listen to you, she said. Her council is full of warriors. They want humans gone. Mark nodded slowly. Then we show them something they don't expect. What's that? She asked. Honor. Zura didn't reply, but something shifted in her expression. Mark turned to leave. Before reaching the door, He stopped and looked back. If the queen gives you a choice, would you stand with us? Zura raised her eyes. If it meant saving my people from another war. Yes, Mark gave a small nod. Then he left the chamber. Outside the palace, the city buzzed with quiet tension. People whispered in the markets. Soldiers gathered near checkpoints. News had spread. Then a human soldier had stood in the royal court, alive, after being declared dead. The queen sat in her private chamber with her top advisors. Her hands were folded, and her expression was unreadable. She lied. One general said, Zura must be made an example. Kill her, and the humans will call it a crime. Another advisor warned. They already see us as brutal. Someone added, this may only push them away. The queen raised her hand, silencing them all. She stared at the flame in the center of the room. He walked into my court without fear, she said slowly. He defends the one who tried to kill him. Either he's a fool, or he truly seeks peace. No one replied. The queen stood. Bring Mark to me. I will speak to him, alone. Later that evening, Mark entered a quiet chamber lit by blue crystals. The queen sat on a raised seat, her long robe flowing across the floor. Sit, she said. Mark obeyed. You surprised many today, the queen said. I didn't plan to, Mark replied. But I won't lie. I want peace. The queen studied him. Zura lied to me. That is clear. But you defend her. Why? Because she made a choice. She ended the cycle, even for a moment. That deserves more than punishment. The queen's eyes narrowed. What makes you think she's worth saving? Mark met her gaze. Because if your strongest warrior can choose peace, then others can too. The queen was silent for a long time. Then she stood. I will consider your words, she said. You will have your answer in the court tomorrow. Mark stood and bowed lightly. Thank you, your majesty. As he left, the queen remained standing, her thoughts racing. The human had spoken with strength, but not the kind she was used to. It was not built on fear. It was built on something far older, and perhaps far stronger. The prison halls of Al-Kira were quiet the next morning. The guards changed shifts without speaking. Inside one of the deeper cells, Zura sat with her back straight and her eyes open. She had not slept. Her mind was filled with questions. Would the queen spare her? Would she be executed in front of the court? Would the humans be blamed for her mistake? The door creaked open. Mark entered again, followed by two guards who stayed near the wall. Zura looked at him but said nothing. You didn't expect me today, Mark said. No, she replied. Mark took a seat across from her. The queen is still deciding your fate, but something tells me she's listening more than she shows. Zura's lips tightened. Listening is not the same as forgiving. No, Mark agreed. But it's a start. They sat in silence for a while. The cold air in the cell felt heavier than before. Zura finally looked up. I want to tell you the truth, she said. Mark nodded slowly. I'm listening. Zura took a breath. I wasn't always like this. When I was young, I believed our world was full of honor and pride. We trained hard. We memorized the words of the queen. We were told humans were violent, greedy, and would never stop until Al-Kira was destroyed. And you believed it? Mark asked. Yes. She replied. I saw what I was supposed to see. I followed orders. I climbed the ranks quickly. I was proud when they called me loyal. I was proud when they sent me to kill. Her voice shook slightly now. But that day in the cliffs, when I faced you, something changed. I saw a man with no fear, but also no hatred. You didn't raise your weapon. You didn't scream or curse. You looked at me like I was not your enemy. Mark stayed quiet, letting her speak. I felt like I had been lied to, not by one person, but by everything I was taught. That moment made me hesitate. I told myself I would finish the job later, then I would return and finish what I started. But the truth is, I didn't want to. Zura looked down at her hands. I told the queen you were dead. I thought the lie would fade. But when you walked into the court, everything returned. The scream, the eyes watching me, the shame of the truth. I thought I was strong. But in that moment, I felt weak. Mark leaned forward. You were not weak. You were honest. That's what makes this matter. Zura looked up. and now I sit in chains. Sometimes chains are not just iron, Mark said. They are the weight of guilt and the fear of change. Zura gave a small nod. You speak like a warrior who has seen too much. Mark gave a tired smile. Maybe I have. He stood slowly. The queen will speak today, in the court. She will decide your punishment. Zura took a deep breath. Then I'm ready. The royal court was full. Nobles in bright robes stood. In circles, Valkyrian generals wore silver armor with red capes. The queen sat on her throne. Her face calm, her hands folded. The human diplomats stood to one side, with Mark beside them. Zura was brought into the court in front of everyone. Her wrists were no longer chained, but she wore simple clothes, no armor, no weapons. Only her truth. The queen raised her hand. The room fell silent. Zura, she said, her voice echoing. You have been called here to answer for your lies, and for sparing an enemy of Valkyria. Zura bowed slightly. Yes, your majesty. You were ordered to kill. You claimed success. But the human soldier you faced survived and now stands here as an ambassador. Yes, Zura said again. The queen stood. Do you deny your actions? I do not deny them. Zura replied. I made a choice, a different choice. Whispers moved through the court. The queen stared at her. Why did you lie? I was afraid, Zura said, her voice clear. Not of death, but of what it would mean to say I had changed. I no longer believed that killing was the only answer. That day, I saw a man who did not fear me. He showed strength and peace. I thought that meant something. Mark stepped forward now. Your Majesty, may I speak? The queen nodded once. Mark's voice carried through the chamber. Zura did not strike me down. She spared my life when she had every reason not to. She could have ended it quickly, but she didn't, and because of that, I stand here today. I did not come to accuse her. I came to thank her. The room grew quiet again. The queen looked at both of them. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes were sharp. You have risked much, she said to Zura, and now you stand with a human. That will once be called betrayal. Zura answered firmly. Then I have betrayed the old way, but not Valkyria. That statement caused more whispers. The queen raised her hand again. I have ruled long, she said. I have seen peace come and go. I have seen warriors rise and fall. But today, I see something rare. She turned to the nobles and generals. Zura broke a rule, but she may have opened a door, one we have kept closed for too long. She faced Zura once more. You will not be punished. You will not be cast out. But you are no longer only a soldier. Zura stood still. You are now a symbol. If you truly believe in peace, then you will help build it. With him, the queen pointed to Mark. You will walk beside the human ambassador. You will answer to both courts. You will serve not as a blade, but as a voice. Gasps echoed. Zura looked stunned. Mark's face remained calm, but his eyes showed respect. Zura bowed her head. I accept. The queen sat down again. Let this be known. The past is not forgotten, but the future will be different. The court began to shift. Some still frowned. Others nodded quietly. Mark stepped beside Zura as the crowd began to move. She looked at him, unsure what to say. You spoke well, Mark said softly. Zura gave a small smile. I wasn't sure anyone would hear. They heard, he said, and some of them listened. Far beyond the palace walls, in quiet corners of the city, others were listening too. A group of Valkyrian generals gathered in a dark chamber, watching the events through a crystal screen. One of them turned to the others. The queen shows weakness, another nodded. We must act before this peace spreads. They placed their hands on the table. Let us prepare. A storm was building, but no one inside the court saw it yet. The city of Valkyria had begun to change. Some of the tall buildings now flew both human and Valkyrian banners. People in the streets spoke in mixed languages. Human engineers worked beside Valkyrian builders, connecting machines and energy sources. For the first time in many years, there was a sense of hope. Inside the palace, the queen moved carefully. She did not smile often, but her words had softened. She spoke of balance and unity. She allowed human advisors into meetings, and she had given Zura and Mark full permission to work together on the peace agreement. But not everyone supported this change. In the lower halls of the city, beneath the stone roads, a group of Vulcarian generals gathered in secret. They sat around a round table. No guards were present, only shadows, sharp eyes, and angry voices. General Rex, an older warrior with a long scar down his cheek, slammed his hand on the table. "We train our children to be warriors," he growled. "Now they are told to hold hands with our enemies." Another general leaned forward. "The queen grows weak. The humans are clever. They speak of peace, but they bring weapons behind their smiles. They have fooled Zura," said another. "She was once our best. Now she stands beside a human like a pet." General Rex stood. "We cannot let this continue. If we wait, our world will be ruled by outsiders. We must act." The others nodded. That night, the plan was set in motion. In the palace tower, Mark stood with Zura on a high balcony. The city lights glowed below. The stars above were sharp and clear. Zura leaned on the railing, silent. "You haven't said much today," Mark said. Zura glanced at him. "Some of the guards won't meet my eyes." Mark nodded. "Change always brings discomfort. They used to follow my orders," she said. "Now they whisper when I walk past." "They fear what they don't understand," Mark said. "But fear can be replaced." "By trust?" Zura asked. "By action," Mark replied. "When they see you stand for something greater, they will remember who you are." Zura looked down at the city. "I hope you're right." Suddenly, a small flash of light appeared in the sky. Then another. At first, they looked like falling stars. But Mark stepped forward, watching closely. "Those are not stars." Within seconds, the palace alarms rang. Explosions shook the far side of the city. Smoke rose above the training fields. Fire lit the rooftops. Zura turned sharply. "The military depot. That's where we store royal weapons." Mark reached for his communicator. "This isn't random. It's a strike." Zura's face hardened. "This is a coup." Inside the palace, chaos spread quickly. Guards shouted commands. Civilians were led to shelter. Fire teams ran to stop the flames. Zura and Mark rushed through the corridors toward the command chamber. The queen was already there, guarded by elite soldiers. Her robes were slightly burnt, but she stood tall. "Report," she said calmly. Guards stepped forward. Explosions across 3 sectors. Royal weapons stolen. "Some of our own soldiers have turned against us." Mark looked at the map on the screen. "They targeted communication towers too. They want to isolate the palace." Zura stepped beside the queen. "This was planned carefully. They waited until peace made us relax." The queen's jaw tightened. "And now they want to break everything we've built." A second guard ran in. General Rex was last seen leaving the armory with loyal forces. He is no longer answering calls. Mark didn't wait. "He's behind this." Zura clenched her fists. "He always spoke against peace." The queen turned to them. "Zura, Mark, you will lead the defense of the palace. We cannot fall." "Not tonight." Zura bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." Mark nodded. "We'll hold the line." The outer walls of the palace turned into a battleground. Loyal guards fought to hold the gates. The sky was filled with smoke and energy blasts. Zura led a team down the western corridor. She moved with the speed and strength of a true warrior. Her commands were clear. Her strikes were sharp. Even those who doubted her before now followed her without question. Mark moved beside her, covering the rear. He fired his pulse weapon with perfect aim. Though not as fast as Zura, he never hesitated. The two worked as one, watching each other's blind spots near the lower entrance. They met a squad of rebels trying to break through. Zura raised her hand. "Stand down." "You don't need to do this." One of the rebels stepped forward. "You're not Vulcarian anymore." Zura stared at him. "Then fight me and see." The rebel charged. Zura met him head-on. The battle was fast, but not cruel. She disarmed him and knocked him to the ground. The others froze. Mark stepped forward. "We don't want more blood. Drop your weapons." After a moment, the rebels lowered their arms. Zura let out a breath. "That's one gate secured." Mark looked to the sky. "But the storm isn't over yet." In the central court, the queen stood ready. Her guards had formed a circle around the throne. Behind the walls, the sounds of battle continued, but something had changed. The tide was turning. Zura and Mark returned to the chamber. Both were covered in dust and ash, but their eyes were steady. "The walls are holding," Zura said. "Many of the rebels are surrendering." They did not expect resistance. The queen nodded. "What of Rex?" Mark answered. "He has fallen back. He may try to regroup." The queen looked at them both. "This attack was meant to destroy what we built, but you stopped it together." She stepped down from the throne. Her voice was strong. "Zura, Mark, today, you proved that peace is not weakness. It takes more strength to protect than to destroy. You have both shown that strength." Zura stood tall. Mark gave a respectful nod. The queen looked at her people. "We will rebuild. We will remember this night, not as the night we fell, but as the night we stood." And across the burning city, the fires began to fade. The wind carried the smoke away. The stars returned to the sky. The morning after the battle, the palace was quiet but tense. The walls still bore marks of fire and damage, and soldiers moved quickly, repairing what they could. The city outside was recovering, but the memory of the attack lingered like a shadow dot inside the royal chamber. Queen Thalara sat at her great desk. Her eyes, sharp and tired, scanned the messages brought by her aides. Most were reports of the damage, lists of injured, and news of loyal forces gathering to prevent further unrest. But her mind was elsewhere. She thought about the battle from the night before, about Zura, the Valkyrian warrior who had saved her life, about Mark, the human soldier turned ambassador, who had stood by Zura and fought alongside her. Their actions had kept the palace safe. But the queen knew that keeping the palace was only the start. She had to decide the future of Valkyria. A knock came at the door. "Enter," she said. Zura and Mark stepped into the chamber. Both looked worn from the fight but proud. "Your Majesty," Zura began, "the palace is secure. We held the walls, and many rebels surrendered." Mark nodded. "The city will need time, but the worst is over." The queen looked at them both. "You have done well, both of you." She paused and then said slowly, "Zura, you face a new path. You no longer serve as a simple warrior. You are a symbol of change. I offer you the role of peacekeeper guardian of the treaty between Valkyria and the humans." Zura's eyes widened. "A peacekeeper?" "Yes," the queen said. "You will travel between courts. You will teach others that strength is not only in battle, but in understanding. It will not be easy. Many will resist." Zura took a deep breath. "I accept." The queen then turned to Mark. "You came to Valkyria as a soldier. You could have fought against us, but you chose peace." Mark bowed his head slightly. "For that, I offer you a place here, not just as ambassador, but as protector of this new alliance. Your courage last night saved many lives." Mark's eyes shone with quiet pride. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will serve Valkyria with honor." The queen rose and walked toward the large window overlooking the city. "This is only the beginning," she said. "There will be challenges. The generals who oppose peace will not give up easily. We must be ready." Zura stepped forward. "We will stand together." Mark smiled. "Two worlds, one future." In the days that followed, the palace transformed. Walls were rebuilt stronger, and new technology from the humans blended with the ancient Valkyrian designs. The two peoples began working side by side, slowly breaking old fears. Zura trained soldiers not just to fight, but to protect and negotiate. She told stories of honor beyond war. Many young warriors listened, some with doubt, others with hope. Mark worked with diplomats and engineers. He shared human ideas about cooperation and trust. He taught that strength was not in weapons alone, but in courage and patience. At the palace, the queen held a council meeting. Generals who had once whispered against peace now sat quietly. Some accepted the new ways. Others plotted in silence. One general, Rex, still resisted openly. He met with his loyal followers in secret caves beneath the city. "We will not let Valkyria fall to humans," he said. voice harsh. The queen is weak. The peacekeeper is a traitor. We will strike again when they least expect it. His followers nodded. But Rex did not know that Zura and Mark were watching. Their alliance was stronger than ever. They moved quickly to stop threats before they could grow. One evening, as the sun set, Zura and Mark stood on the palace balcony. The city below sparkled with lights. The air was warm. "We have come far," Zura said softly. Mark looked at her. "Yes, but there is still work to do." Zura nodded. "I never thought I would stand beside a human. Yet here we are." Mark smiled. "Sometimes enemies become the best allies." Zura laughed lightly. "And sometimes the hardest battles are within ourselves." They stood together in silence, watching the stars appear one by one. The queen's words echoed in their minds. This was only the beginning. Together, they would face whatever came next. The dawn broke over Valkyria like a soft promise. The twin suns rose slowly, lighting the city with a warm golden glow. The air was fresh after the night's quiet, and the streets began to fill with people ready to face a new day. Inside the palace, the mood was cautious but hopeful. The battle from weeks before had passed, and peace was beginning to root itself in the hearts of many. Yet the memories of the rebellion lingered, reminding everyone how fragile this peace was. Mark stood by a window in the great hall, looking out over the city. His mind was full of plans, ideas, and hopes. He had never imagined that his path would lead him here, from soldier to ambassador, from enemy to ally. Zura entered the room quietly. Her steps were light but confident. She carried herself with the calm strength of someone who had faced both war and doubt, and had come through stronger. "Morning," Mark said without turning. Zura smiled. "Morning." They stood side by side, watching the city wake. "Do you think the peace will hold?" she asked. Mark sighed. "I want to believe it will. But peace is not a gift. It's a choice every day." Zura nodded. "And it's a hard choice." The day was filled with meetings. The queen gathered her council, and Zura and Mark presented plans for new cooperation, shared defenses, joint education, trade agreements. Slowly, the room began to fill with voices speaking not of war, but of hope. Still, there were doubts. Some generals spoke quietly against the plans, fearful of change. But the queen held firm. "We must build a future where our children do not know war," she said. "We owe it to them." Zura looked around the room and saw that many listened, some with reluctance, others with a spark of belief. After the council, Mark met with human diplomats. They talked late into the evening about the work ahead. More planets, more systems. Watched Valkyria's steps closely. A success here could mean hope for many worlds. But in the quiet halls beneath the city, the last of the rebels met in secret. General Rex, defeated but not broken, planned one final strike. "This peace will crumble," he vowed. "We will remind Valkyria of what we lost." That night, a festival was held in the city square. Lights hung from trees, music filled the air, and both humans and Valkyrians gathered to celebrate their new alliance. Children ran between the crowds, laughter echoing. Zura and Mark walked side by side, watching the celebrations. "Do you remember when we first met?" Mark asked. Zura laughed softly. "How could I forget? You surprised me." "You spared my life," Mark said. "That changed everything." Zura looked at him. "It did. But so did your courage to come back here and stand for peace." They stopped near a fountain where water sparkled under the moonlight. "Peace is fragile," Zura said, "but it's worth fighting for." Mark nodded. "Together, we can make sure it lasts." Suddenly, a shadow moved near the edge of the crowd. Two figures slipped away quietly. They were not part of the celebration. Zura's eyes narrowed. Trouble. Mark reached for his communicator. "Stay alert." They followed the figures to a narrow alley. There, hidden in the darkness, was a small group of rebels. Rex's voice was low but fierce. "Tonight, we remind the city that Valkyria belongs to warriors, not to peace." Zura and Mark stepped forward, revealing themselves. "Your fight is over," Zura said firmly. Rex laughed bitterly. "This is only the beginning." The rebels moved quickly, but Zura and Mark were ready. Their years of training and trust made them strong. The battle was swift but careful. No one wanted to harm civilians nearby. With skill and speed, they disarmed the rebels and held them until guards arrived back at the palace. The queen watched as the rebels were brought before her. She spoke with a calm voice. Your fight is with the future. You may not like it, but the world is changing. Rex glared but said nothing. The queen turned to Zura and Mark. You have both done well. Your courage saved this city again. Zura bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty. Mark smiled. We will continue to protect this peace. Weeks passed, and the city grew stronger. New alliances formed. Trade flourished. Children learned about both cultures in schools. The scars of war began to heal. One evening, Zura and Mark stood once more on the palace balcony. The twin suns were setting, painting the sky with orange and purple. Zura looked at Mark. Do you think we changed the future? Mark looked at her with a smile. We did, but the future is still ours to shape. They stood in silence, feeling the weight and hope of what lay ahead. The stars began to shine, and Valkyra welcomed a new dawn.